Welcome to the All Outdoors Photography Podcast. This podcast is about all things outdoor photography, including landscapes, wildlife, macro, and more. The show features two talented photographers, Henry Doyle and Ryan Taylor, who bring their different experiences in photography to the podcast. The show is released weekly every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so I hope you sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. In today's episode, we have Cole Waltner on the show, a bird, wildlife, and landscape photographer based out of Montana. We talk about how Cole got into photography, the methods of hiking around the landscape he uses, and the target birds and mammals he seeks. Cole's background in hunting, hiking, and backpacking has helped him produce exceptional imagery, with which he shares his traveling experiences and skill behind the camera.
Welcome back to episode 60 of the All Outdoors Photography Podcast, and today we're having a very talented wildlife photographer on the show.
Yes, we have Cole Waltner on the show. Welcome, Cole. Tell us more about your photography and your background and how you came to be.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys. I've been listening to the show for a while, so it's quite an honor to be on. So I started taking pictures in about 2013. It's actually a pretty cool story. My best friend got deployed to Afghanistan, and when he came back in 2013 timeframe, he just wasn't the same. For those that have been deployed, you kind of understand that, we see things, you do things, stuff happens over there, and sometimes it takes a little bit to adjust. And he had been taking pictures for quite a while, wildlife, landscapes, that kind of thing. And he came down to where I live to visit, and he asked if I wanted to go with him to take pictures. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. I really don't have a camera or anything. And he's like, don't worry about it. Let's just go. And we went up to a place about 2 hours from my house. It's got a couple of waterfalls, and it's just a nice little 3/4 mile hike up in the mountains. And took some pictures of the waterfall, took some pictures of some birds. Turned out to be, I think, Clark's nutcracker, some magpies, maybe a hawk or two that was up there. And by the time we came back home, which, like I said, was a 2-hour drive, he had completely changed. He was back to my best friend that I've known and grown up with. He came back to the house. We hung out for a couple of days. He was playing with the girls, and we were out in the yard taking pictures of the birds in the yard. And I was like, wow, if that's what taking pictures can do to somebody, I want some of that. I've been in law enforcement for almost 15 years now. And before that, I was in the military. And I've always done stuff that kind of revolves around that, shooting, tactical training, that kind of thing. So I really didn't have an outlet, to something completely different. And as soon as he left, I told my wife, I'm like, hey, I need to get a camera and a lens. And so I ended up getting a refurbished T3i. I think I had a 70-300 kit lens, and I was off and running, spending every waking moment that I wasn't at work or doing family things on YouTube, learning how to shoot and what to look for and how to do it. And I've kind of been off and running ever since.
Wow, that's awesome. What a great story. First of all, thank you and your friend for your service and what you're doing today. That's awesome that you're able to take a break from that and find that through wildlife photography. So
absolutely, yeah, it's pretty impressive what a few days out in the mountains can do, or along the ocean, or anywhere. I mean, as long as you're out in nature and taking pictures, I'm down. It recharges the soul, the mind, everything, and it can happen quick.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right, yeah. It's a lot more lower stress too, I imagine.
Yeah. There's no stress involved whatsoever. Well, I'll take that back. When you have a target bird or a target animal that you've spent months and months researching, and then you go to location and try to get it, there's a little bit of stress involved in that, but it's a fun stress.
Yeah, definitely. Like an adrenaline rush.
Oh yeah, totally.
Did you have any kind of background in like animal identification or bird identification before you went out with your friend that day?
Not really. I've grown up hunting, and I'm still an avid hunter. I love hunting. I believe that we all have to do our part in conservation, and hunters play a big part in that. But as far as like bird identification, none of it. That was kind of the catalyst to get me into the bird stuff, was that trip with my best friend up into the mountains there. And he was ratting off birds like crazy. He went to college for a biology degree, and he took a couple of ornithology classes, and he could name birds like you wouldn't believe. And I was like, man, I just used to call them little gray birds or a hawk, or everything was a robin or a chickadee,
Hmm.
and once I saw that there's all these different species, like I think Montana has 436 recorded species.
Wow.
I was like, holy cow, this is something new, something I can learn, something that I'll always be learning. I'll never have it perfected. And so I just started diving into that world and learning how to ID birds. Sound, not so good yet. And like I said, I've been doing this since 2013, probably seriously since 2015. So, but visually, I'm getting fairly decent at it by now.
Right. It's like that's the great thing about birding is like you never truly get bored of it. Like there's always something new to see that may like pass through the state or, better photos, maybe even of species you've already seen before. So, you're always
Oh,
learning as you go along too.
totally. And I mean, I have bird feeders set up and perches set up right outside of my window, and I've got the window so there's no screen on it and I can open it up, and I'm always checking, always looking, taking different pictures in different light and different perches, different behaviors. I mean, yeah, it's a never-ending game, and that's what's so fun about it, especially the bird photography. I love wildlife photography, landscape photography, but the bird photography is just such a I mean, it's something new every minute. It can be something new. So it's
Yeah,
pretty
100.
impressive.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. As far as I know, we've never had a hunter on the show as a guest. And I know we're a photography podcast, of course, but I got to ask, so how has like hunting, come into play, I guess, with the wildlife photography?
You know, it's given me a greater appreciation for the animal. I mean, I like I said, I understand the need for hunting and conservation, and I still do it. I love hunting. I love everything about it. The challenge, the stalk, the chase, the preparation, much like in photography, looking for target species. And there's been a lot of times now, especially since I've been into photography, that I don't pull the trigger on something. I'll just be in the moment, and sometimes I'm like, man, I wish I had my camera. Anymore, I take my camera with me, so I have the rifle in one hand or my bow in one hand and my camera, strapped around my back or in my backpack for sure. But it's just it's opened up the world of hunting and photography even more. I mean, it's expounded on both areas in my life. And I'll probably always hunt. Like I said, I love hunting, and I see the benefit in it for everything. But like, there's been times where I don't pull the trigger anymore, and I just think that's kind of a natural progression, especially when you're into photography.
Hmm. You can kind of
Awesome.
appreciate that behavior, and that'll carry over to your next hunt, to your next photograph, even if you just sit there and watch it. So it's
Yeah,
awesome.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they always say like learning especially is like you want to do direct observation, like and just kind of take a step back and not really be so concerned about the photos, but just really observe their behavior. It helps you really learn and be better about like birding in general too.
Oh yeah, totally. And birding has actually helped me become a better archery hunter. I mean, I've learned how to stalk and sneak and crawl and all sorts of stuff just to get a picture of a bird, and it's kind of translated over into archery hunting too. So it's kind of a win-win for me.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Yeah, it helps both things. It's almost like harmonious how the relationship between the two really helps out, improves your skill at both.
Yeah.
And I'd imagine there's some like combination of equipment too, like your camo gear, I would imagine, and blinds and stuff.
Totally. Yeah, I use the same
Hmm.
the same clothing that I wear hunting, I wear on my photography trips. I do have to pack a little bit more gear now that I take both with me during hunting season. So I've got a couple of, tripods that I normally wouldn't carry. The camera gear itself, instead of having a little point and shoot, I'm rolling around with a 6D or a 7D Mark II, or something of that nature. And then I usually have a 70 to 200 and a 16 millimeter, maybe a 50, and then all your hunting stuff on top of it. So my pack's a little bit heavier, but it's totally worth it.
Yeah, for sure. You said 70 to 200 there. Is that like your longest lens? Is that?
No,
No,
no, I
okay.
have an 800. I switched to mirrorless about a year ago,
Hmm.
and ended up getting that 800
Oh, cool.
Canon RF f11,
Uh-huh.
and it's actually been a pretty great lens for the kind of stuff I like
Yeah.
to do. My first experience with it was in Belize last March, and I ended up doing a vacation, and then I added 3.5 days of just a birding trip on top of it, and went into the jungle, um, and was able to walk around for 3.5 days and not have any issues with the the weight. I mean, it's such a lightweight lens. And the f11 with the R6 and the capabilities at higher ISO, I really didn't see a big issue with it. If you're pixel peeping, obviously, but as far as printing pictures on 1624s, even a little bit bigger than that, light editing and run it through denoise if you have to. And I've had great results with it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I had the 600 for about a year. I did upgrade to the 1 to 500, but that 600, it was great. People overlook that f11 just because of that aperture, but you can really get some great pictures.
You can. And I was able to get some really good bokeh with it too. I mean, if you have a little bit farther of a background away, and I've got I think I may have sent you a picture of the red crossbill, and it's the background is a couple of aspen trees that are golden yellow, and the bokeh was actually pretty nice, with the bird in the front and in the blurry background. So yeah, I'm happy with it.
Mm-hmm. And those are pretty darn lightweight too, so I'm sure it helps when you're out hiking for miles and miles.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah,
so the crossbow shot's very clean. Yeah, I could definitely see it.
Mm-hmm. So how much, hiking, backpacking, and traveling goes into that photography? You mentioned, like a Belize trip. How often, do you travel around to take the photos you take?
So it just depends. I'm really lucky. I live 2.5 hours from Yellowstone Park, so I'm there all the time. I probably do 15 to 20 trips to Yellowstone a year. Mostly in the winter. I love the winter photography in Yellowstone. And then I try to do a couple of bird photography trips in the spring during the migration. I've done Arizona, Texas, Belize. I'm going to do Dauphin Island here in a couple of months. And then later this fall, I'm going to Nepal for 3 weeks. So, it's about 3 to 4 trips a year, just kind of depending on what I'm feeling at the time. And then it depends what my best friend wants to go and do. We usually meet up for one of the bird photography trips.
That's awesome. Yeah. Do you plan it around like migrations and all that stuff too?
Oh yeah, totally. Dauphin Island, we're trying to get down there right during warbler migration.
Awesome.
And are you looking for bird species in Nepal there, or is that more of a landscape trip?
No, it's more of a landscape trip. And I've always wanted to go to Nepal. I've been really obsessed with the culture and the history of the Nepalese people. And when I was 18 and just graduated high school, I told my parents, I said, when I turn 40, I'm going to go to Nepal. And a few years later, I met my wife and I told her that too. I was like, when I turn 40 for my 40th birthday, I'm going to Nepal. And then this year I turned 40. So in October, my trip is booked and heading to Nepal.
Awesome.
Yeah. And it'll be landscape. I'm going to take a 70 to 200 and then probably a 16 millimeter and work with those two lenses and see what I can get. I am taking the 800 because after I go through the Himalaya and back to Kathmandu, I'm going to go down to the jungle for 3 days. And
awesome.
Then that'll be birds and elephants and tigers and caiman and that kind of thing.
I mean, and there's always a chance of a snow leopard too. I know how elusive those are, but that's the area to see them.
Totally. That would be a phenomenal trip on its own, just to go even have a chance at a snow leopard. And I think there's about 3 or 4 companies that are doing guided trips for snow leopard right now, and they're not cheap, but I think they'd be a ton of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, what kind of landscapes in particular would you be taking down there? Like waterfalls, or just like what's the topography like?
Well, the Himalayas are the tallest mountains in the world, obviously. A lot of the stuff I'm looking for is sunrise, sunsets along the high peaks there, trying to get some of that alpine glow. In October, there's not a whole lot of drama in the sky, but I wanted it. I didn't want to be there during monsoon season when you get the drama, obviously. And then a lot of the villages in the foreground with your mountains in the background. That's kind of what I'm looking for.
It's cool. Is there a favorite place you've been to that you traveled so far?
Favorite place.
Most memorable, or maybe your best photos, or any cool stories with them, maybe?
Man, I'd have to... Honestly, I know this is going to sound cliche, and I'm sure you've heard it before, but it's pretty much every time I go out. There's always something I take away from it, Anytime I get to go with my best friend Zane on a trip, like we went out to Oregon last April and it rained and snowed on us for a couple of days, 3 of the 4 days we were there, but we came away with some great photos. We were able to nail the target birds that we wanted. So, that was a great trip. I had a really good time in September with elk during the rut in northeastern Montana. and I got to shoot with a photographer that I've wanted to shoot with for a long time, and he kind of mentored me a little bit there for a day and a half. So I mean, that was a great experience. Um, Texas was great. Belize was great. I mean, anytime I'm out shooting, I'm having a good time. So
That's a good attitude, honestly. It's just I've told people before when they ask me like, "What's your favorite bird?" and I'm like, "The one that's in front of my lens or my binoculars."
exactly.
It's a good mindset because it's just it opens it up to like everything's in a way kind of like equal.
Yeah.
Everything's just good. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I
Good.
do say I did get a peregrine falcon a couple years ago, and I was just
Ooh.
driving down the road out in a wildlife management area about 30 minutes from my house and saw this peregrine on this gas line post. It says there's a gas line running across the road, and I was able to stop my car, get out, set up, and take pictures of him. And he just sat there and let me do it. So I mean, that was a pretty cool experience to get a peregrine, and I was able to get him full frame without any cropping. I mean, he was right off the road. I mean, that was kind of cool. The snow goose migration that comes right through Montana, and we get 12, 15, 18,000 at a time that come through in northwestern Montana. I go there every spring to get pictures of that. That's a pretty impressive few days. I mean, like I said, it's just like anything that's in front of the lens is a good time.
Yeah, I think that's a great attitude, for sure. Do you want to talk a little bit about kind of the bigger game you've shot in the past, like the elk? I know you mentioned that, and what's kind of your favorite species there to work with?
Oh, I have a love affair with elk. Honestly, I love elk during the rut. I mean, there's just so much behavior. The bulls are fighting each other. The cows are constantly chirping and talking. Bulls are pushing each other around and bugling, 24 hours a day. So that's an adrenaline rush in its own. Second favorite would be bighorn sheep. We have a lot of bighorn sheep around here, and then closer to Yellowstone. And I try to hit that during the rut as well, December, January, and I've got to spend 4 or 5 hours at a time with 3 and 4 rams that are button heads, and I'm the only one out there. I'm hiking up and trying to find them, and just spending hours with these rams that are doing their thing. And I'm 20, 30 yards away from them. That's a pretty intense time.
Wow, that's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah. When you do these trips, do you like camp out? Do you have like a tent or a hammock, or are you like out of a car? Like, what's your setup maybe with that?
Just depends. So when I went to northeastern Montana, the weather's really, really good. Usually it's actually too hot normally. So I'll just crash in the back of my Forerunner. I've got it set up to where I can throw my sleeping bag and a pad in there, and then I cook on a little, gas stove and mountain house it and that kind of thing. I do a lot of backpacking. If the weather's going to be fairly decent, I'll just throw my sleeping pad on the ground and sleep under the stars. I do have a ultralight floorless tent that I use too if I'm going to go into the back country. So it kind of just depends on what I'm doing. Like I said, I live 2.5 hours from Yellowstone, so I can do a day trip, and it's not that big a deal. But if I do stay, it's usually either in my Forerunner or in a sleeping bag.
So I've heard that Yellowstone's been getting like more and more crowded, the past couple of years, especially with the pandemic and, it reopening. Do you have a lot of problems with crowds, or, back in the backcountry, is it remote enough, or what's been your experience there?
Definitely more people. Like 4 or 5 years ago, I would go in the wintertime, and if I saw 15 other photographers, I mean, it was a busy day. You have your wolf watchers that are there all the time. That's a given. But your actual photographers, 15, 20 was a busy day. And now it's about 3 times that during the winter on the northern range, where you can drive the road between Gardner and Cook City, Montana. And then in the summer, it's insane. It's hard to go to Yellowstone in the summer anymore. Yeah. I usually quit going about end of May, after the bears are pretty much all out of hibernation and they start rubbing, so their hides don't look as nice. I'll probably quit going to the park then, and then not go back until mid-September.
Oh, wow.
Is usually how I do it. But yeah, the summer months are just insane anymore. I don't know how they're going to address it. Something's going to have to be done. Maybe a permit system, kind of like Yosemite does, or a bus system where they park outside of the park and then ride inside the park like Yosemite. I don't know. Something's going to have to change. I mean, it's a beautiful place. I want everybody to see it and enjoy it, but it's getting pretty crowded.
Yeah, and with that, it's a lot of exposure to those animals too. I've seen, video clips of people going right up to bison and right up to elk, and it's getting pretty concerning. I definitely agree.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, they are pretty acclimated to people, but I mean, they're still getting some kind of pressure, and I'm sure it's affecting the animals as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah.
But
So do you have any like closer locations to you that you like going to, or is it kind of just Yellowstone?
oh no, I can go 5 minutes from my house and be taking pictures of elk, antelope, deer,
Awesome.
birds, or we have a birding hotspot a minute and a half from my house, down along the river. And then we've got a wildlife management area 20 miles north of my house. So, I mean, yeah, I can go everywhere, and I do. Like I said, I'm out 2 or 3 times a week. Sometimes I don't, make one shutter actuation on the camera. Sometimes I come home with 2,000. It just kind of depends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, for me at least, I don't know if you find this, but even if I don't take a picture, it's worth it. I'm gaining new knowledge or just, spending time out in nature. So,
Oh yeah, totally.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the best part at the end of the day with it too. Kind of touched upon it there for a moment, but how does like conservation play into your photos? Are you more of like an artist type photographer, or do you like to really drive the point home of like conservation with your images?
Oh, obviously, I think any photographer wants to make it, do the best they can with light. I mean, I'm a really big fan of dark backgrounds, lighted subject, that kind of thing. Some silhouette type stuff. But if you look at my stuff, it's more conservation oriented, a little bit more documentary oriented, and some of that's just because of time constraints. I mean, with my job and shift work, I can't always get out at morning or early night, but I'm not going to let that stop me. I'm going to work with what I have, obviously.
I'd say it's working for you. So yeah,
But I appreciate that.
yeah, no problem. That's great. Did you choose where to live, like because of the close proximity to like Yellowstone and all the places around you, or is it just kind of like happenstance that that's where you live?
Oh no, I grew up here.
Okay,
Oh, cool.
yeah,
So no, I grew up in a small town in south central Montana, and I mean, we've been an outdoor oriented family ever since I can remember. I mean, we would spend our summers camping. My parents would load up a wall tent and the pickup, and we would go find a place and camp every weekend growing up. My cousins and I and their families, we would all do the same thing. We would just go camping, fishing, and then hunting season would roll around. We'd go hunting. And my grandfather always had a camera with him. He still does. He's 90 some years old, and he
Wow.
still takes a camera with him wherever he goes,
That's
and
awesome.
so it's always been in our family. We've always been an outdoor oriented family. So it was just kind of natural. Once I got out of the military, I was going to come back home anyway. I kind of miss the mountains here and the slow pace that we have in Montana. And so I knew I was going to come back here. And it just so happened that I went to college to be a teacher, and I just really wasn't feeling it, and somehow ended up in law enforcement. And so I'm a sheriff's deputy here for the county that I live in. And it's been a pretty good ride so far.
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, people I've talked to that have been from Montana, they say like the same thing is like you're within minutes of mountains. Like there's always something outdoorsy to do all year, and it's just it's awesome to be there.
Yeah, it's a great place, especially if you're into the outdoors for sure. I say that, and then you always get angry when people move in, but there's a lot of Montana, so I'm not too
Mm-hmm.
worried about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd be spread out enough. Yeah.
Yeah,
Have you checked out Glacier National Park at all? It's probably more
I
north
have.
than you, but
Yeah, Glacier's about a 6.5 hour drive. I've been there a
mm,
couple of times. I think 3 years ago maybe was the last time I was there though.
cool.
So, but I do go to Glacier like every 3 or 4 years we go up there.
Nice. Yeah, that's cool. I have a aunt that lives up there, and it seems like it's amazing. I definitely got to make it up there eventually.
Yeah, for photography, there's really not too many places in the world I think that are as photogenic as Glacier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. What about bears with your photography? I know there's a big stigma around them, but what has your experience been, with grizzly and black bears?
I've never had any issues with them. I've backpacked in all over Montana my entire life, and um, I've had bears go through my camp. I've had bears walk by my tent. I've actually hunting about 3 years ago. I was elk hunting, and was in this north slope that was full of timber and really thick, and I jumped over a log and there was a black bear sleeping underneath it.
Oh
And
wow.
I hit the ground. He jumped up and got on his hind legs, and my eyes were probably as big as my head. And he looked at me, I looked at him, and he ran down the hill. And that was the closest I've ever been to a bear. That was probably 15, 20 feet. But
Jeez.
I've never had any, and bears don't really bother me. They're going to be bears. And as
Hmm.
long as you're out doing what you do and do it safely, then I don't really think you're going to have an issue. So,
Yeah.
and if you have an encounter, then you're going to have an encounter. So there's really nothing you can do about it.
Hmm. That's a great perspective for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, it's all about being sensible, which a lot of people I don't think they are sometimes.
Yeah. I take the precautions necessary, especially in the backcountry, I'll hang my food away from my tent. I don't cook near my camp. If I'm fishing, I'm going to fish away from my camp if I can help it. Those kind of things. So, it's not like we're inviting bears into our camp, but um,
Hmm.
like I said, they're just being bears, and if you take the precautions necessary, then I'm not too worried about it.
Have you done a lot
Right.
of photography with bears?
Not a whole lot. Obviously in the park in the spring, I've got quite a few black bear photos of from Yellowstone Park, a few just outside of the park. Grizzly bears and I for photography seem to have a love-hate relationship. One day in the park, I saw 17 grizzly bears, and I didn't have
Whoa.
one that came out with a decent photo. They were just too far away, or the foreground was crappy, or the sun was wrong, or I got too excited and my settings were messed up. So I just have a love-hate with grizzly bears. But
So yeah, is there any other like favorite stories, I guess, from out in the field that you'd like to share?
favorite stories, man, I don't know. How do you guys do it? How do you guys pick a favorite story? Like I said earlier, I just every time I'm out, it's just, for one, I'm blessed to be able to do it. There's people that never get to experience what we experience.
Hmm.
They'll never watch the behavior of a black-throated blue or a black-throated gray or a robin for that matter. They just go about their lives
Yeah.
kind of blinded by what everything's around us. And so I don't take any of that for granted. I take every opportunity to absorb it all in. And especially in my line of work. I could go to work tomorrow and not come home.
Hmm.
That's just the reality of the job I do. And so any opportunity I get to absorb that, and especially the nature around me, I'm going to do it. And so I try not to make a favorite one, I don't think, just because to me, every time's a favorite. Like we said earlier, every time out, there's going to be something that we're going to take away from it that's going to enlighten us, educate us, something in that nature. So,
Hmm.
it's hard to pinpoint just a favorite.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's nearly impossible. I guess you just kind of like have to, with each photo, there's a story, I think, and you just kind of have to sort through them. But that would take years for me at least. I'm sure for you as well.
Yeah, totally. I do like one of my earliest memories of photography is we were backpacking with my grandparents when my grandmother was still alive. And we were 9, 10 miles back, and we went to these backcountry lakes, and my grandfather was taking pictures. And I think I was 8 or 9 years old. And my grandpa was like, we need to get some water. So they went out on these rocks and was filtering water out of the lake. Well, my grandmother slipped and fell, and the camera was around her neck for some reason. And instead of asking if she's okay or anything like that, my grandpa was like, is the camera okay, Bonnie? Is the camera okay? And I'm like, whoa. Even at 9 years old, I'm like, I think you're supposed to ask if she's okay, and all he was concerned about was his
Uh-huh.
camera, because we're 9 miles back and he wants to take pictures, at sunset. And so that's one of my earliest memories of being, around photography. And it was probably just kind of a matter of time before I got into that and got to that point. And now it's, like I said, it's consuming.
Hmm.
I don't know, like I said, I turned 40 this year. And so you kind of be like, man, I could be halfway through my life. Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? There's all these questions that come up, but man, when I pick up a camera or walk by my computer and see my cameras and lenses sitting there, and I'm just like, yeah, that's right. I know I'm supposed to be doing that. And so, like I
Wow.
said, it's just every time is, something amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's great you have that feeling with your work. In regards to like where you see yourself going with photography, do you think it'll always stay a hobby, or do you ever want to make it a career, or what's your plan with that?
I don't know. I've sold pictures. I've been lucky enough to have 3 billboards now, with my pictures on them that different companies have bought and used. And so, I mean, that was kind of cool. I've been on the cover of a couple of different tourism magazines for the state of Montana. And I've been published in about a half a dozen or more magazines outside of the cover. And so I've sold some pictures, obviously, for that kind of stuff. And then I have people that buy metal prints or canvases, probably, a dozen or so times a year. I mean, I make enough money with that kind of thing to buy a new lens every year, or, every other year buy a camera body. So, but to make it a full-time career, I don't know. I mean, it's such a hard thing to do, especially in 2022. I mean, there were over 2 billion photos taken in the world in 2021. I mean, that's hard. That's a lot of competition,
Yeah.
So to stand out among 2 billion photos to make a career out of it, you got your work cut out for you. But
Yeah.
we'll see. I'm not going to say no, that's for sure.
Yeah, at least you're open to the opportunity. But yeah, I agree where it's like, especially with photography, it's become so much like the tools are so much more universal. And like, so of course, the number of people doing it's grown exponentially as well. So yeah, it's definitely a stiff market to get into.
Yeah. And with the technology now, I mean, you read about people picking up an R5 or an R6, and I reference Canon because that's what I've shot my entire time in photography. But I mean, it doesn't have to be brand specific, but you can pick one up, watch YouTube for 2 hours, and go out and take decent photos.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's definitely hard to get into. I mean, I applaud those that are making it a career and starting out now and doing it, or even 5 years ago, and then totally cool to see the guys that have been doing it for 20, 30 years and adapting to the technology and still pushing out images like crazy,
Yeah. Have you experimented with the video side of things at all?
I have a whole file on my computer right now full of video.
Oh,
and
cool.
That's pretty much as far as it goes. My video editing skills are pretty minimal.
Yeah.
But out in the field, I do take some video. I just, like I said, I don't know. I'm not into the editing part of the video yet. So they just sit in a file right now, but it's fun.
Yeah. I mean, with me too, like I feel like when I'm out there, I always think stills first. Like even if it might be a better video clip, I always like, oh, I have to stop this. I need to get the still. I don't know if you found that.
No, I'm always a stills first guy.
Yeah.
So when I was shooting the elk rut this fall with the photographer, I don't know if you've heard of him, Ron Hayes out of Wyoming.
He's I love their
phenomenal,
podcast.
Phenomenal photographer. Yeah, they have a great podcast
Favorite
too. But I shot with him
time, for sure.
Yeah, it's a great podcast. I actually talked to him today for a little bit, but awesome. So he was up there with me shooting the elk rut, and he did a ton of video, and he was, like I said, kind of mentoring me a little bit on that kind of stuff. And so I got to see some of it, but it's the time behind the computer that I'm struggling with. But I definitely go out and do shoot a little bit of video, or I'll shoot some bird behavior video just in the yard, just to have it, and I'll work on it someday.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, with the convenience of like DSLRs, I mean, you can just flip it to video mode pretty quickly. Like I've had to, focus in on a bird or something perched somewhere, and I'll just flip the video and get a few, like a minute clip from it too.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, I'll do the same thing, but I'm definitely a stills first guy.
So. Yeah, it's a lot to juggle though, honestly. So yeah, I totally get that too. I mean, it's just wherever you want your focus at.
Yeah.
And then in like regards to like image editing for stills, do you do like heavy editing, or what's your process there?
Not really. I've never been a heavy editor. I'm pretty much a Lightroom guy. If I have to go into Photoshop, I will. But if most of my images I can knock out in Lightroom in about a minute and a half, 2 minutes max. So I do use a little bit of denoise and sharpen on the Topaz plugins once in a while. But no, I try to get it right in camera.
Yeah.
Someone told me that a long time ago when I was just starting. If you can get it pretty much right in camera, then you're doing all right as a photographer. So that's always my goal.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I've never found a slider in Lightroom that like replaces the golden light in the morning, or soft light on an animal. So
no, not at all.
Yeah.
Plus, it takes so much work to like clone out tree branches too. That's always a pain.
Yeah, if you look at some of my images, you'd be like, dude, you should have cloned that branch out. Well, yeah, but that was the setting. I mean,
right.
For me, and for me as into the birds quite a bit, and as a birder, I mean, a lot of my pictures are for documentation purposes, just like, hey, I got that bird. And so I'm not going to edit out a branch or something like that. Now, if somebody messages me and be like, hey, I'd really like to put that on my wall, then we'll visit about it. And I'll be like, hey, I can take that branch out. We'll give a little bit more of a frame to your bird or something like that. Then yeah, I'll do that if the client wants me to. But I have a hard time manipulating a photograph like that because I want it to represent what I saw, not what
Yeah.
I wish I would have seen.
Right. Yeah. It's almost like a stylistic choice too of like I want to keep it natural,
Yeah.
unless if someone was to buy it, like you said, and frame it
Yeah.
or hang it on the wall.
Yeah. And I totally get why people do it. I mean, a lot of the photographers that I visit with and I talk to and I kind of aspire to learn from, they have clients that have a pretty, this is exactly what I need and this is how I need it. And so I totally get the photo manipulation when it comes to that kind of thing. But as far as my own personal preference, if I can keep it as natural as I saw it, then that's what I want to do.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. So I know you touch upon gear, but is there anything like additional that you use? Do you use like stability, like tripods, monopods at all, or anything
Yeah,
else?
I do. I mean, obviously for landscape, I'm packing around a couple of different tripods. If I'm in the back country, so I went on a 30-mile through hike like 3 or 4 years ago, 30-mile through hike through the Beartooth Mountains, and my pack weighed like 46 pounds. Well, then I added my camera gear and I had this crazy heavy Manfrotto tripod at the time and made my pack weigh almost 60 pounds. I'm like, this is ridiculous. So I kind of realized quickly if I want landscape stuff in the back country that you're gonna have to spend some quality money and get a lightweight carbon fiber tripod. And now I've got two carbon fiber tripods, one for landscape, one for when I'm doing wildlife, carbon fiber heads, the whole 9 yards. So I do use it. I'm pretty impressed with the R6 and the 800 setup or any of the RF lenses anymore, where you can shoot handheld, I mean, down to 1/20th of a second and
Oh,
get
yeah.
totally usable
Mhm.
images.
Even video too, I find.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I took some video up in with the elk in September and I was handheld and the video looks good as far as when it's on my computer. So
Hmm. Yeah, I think technology is changing so fast. It's great to see for sure.
yeah. But yeah, gone are the days where you're packing around a 35-pound tripod to take landscape pictures, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, and a 13-pound 600 f4 or whatever. That's
Yeah. But
exhausting.
if somebody was going to give me a heavy 600
Mm.
f4, I'd probably take it and suffer.
Yeah, I
You know.
totally agree there.
You get used to the weight of it, I think.
Oh, totally. Totally.
Yeah. We'll cut
Especially
that
when
part out. Yeah, just kidding. Yeah.
We get the dreaded warbler neck too, especially.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say, and I'm happy that I didn't have a heavy lens when I went to Belize and we were, hiking through the jungle for 10, 12 hours looking for different birds. I was like, this lightweight setup was so nice.
Mhm.
The guy that I had with me, he's like, most people make it 2 hours and we have to be done. They can't carry their gear. I'm like, let's keep going all
Yeah.
day. So I will say that's where this 800 and the R5 and the R6 kind of shine. I think
Uh-huh.
if you're into that kind of photography for sure.
Yeah. I'm
Especially
curious
going to
about.
hike everywhere.
Sorry, Brett. I don't know why
Really?
we cut each other off so much tonight. I don't know what's going on. You go ahead. Sorry.
I don't even know what I was going to say. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm curious about that Belize trip. Like the bird species there just must have been amazing. Like completely different from what you came from. So can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah. So there's just obviously it's Central America, so there's going to be different species than what we're used to way up here in Montana. But I was surprised to notice that there was a lot of similar species between Belize and when I went to Texas the year before.
Mm.
I'm kind of big on the trogon species. I don't know if you guys are familiar with. We have elegant trogons in Arizona and Texas. They're I don't know, maybe a 13, 14-inch bird. They kind of sound like a howler monkey to me, but we have them in Texas and Arizona. And I chased some down in Arizona with Zane when we went to Arizona for birds. And then in Belize, they have like 5 different species of trogon, and I was able to find 3. So that was kind of cool. And then they have a ton of tanager species, and I love tanagers. We have tanagers here in Montana. Just the one species, but down there, I think I was able to get 5 different tanagers.
Wow.
I think. Um, and then the shorebirds are completely different. Limpkins, I guess we get limpkins in Florida, but I've never
Mm.
seen them before in my travels to the Gulf, like in Texas or anything like that. But I was able to get limpkins in Belize, three different species of kingfishers. So the
Wow.
bird species were amazing, and I didn't even touch the surface. I mean, there were places I wanted to go that I didn't get to go because they were closed because of the pandemic.
Hmm.
So I'm definitely going to go back in a couple of years. After Nepal, I'm going to do Alaska for birds and bears, and then
Cool.
probably go back to Belize or Costa Rica for something like that for birds for sure.
Yeah, that's amazing. That jungle environment, though. I mean, I've heard it can be a little bit tough to work in. As far as like light and kind of all the warm humidity and all of that. Like, how did you deal with that? And was it too much of a challenge?
The light was the biggest challenge. I
Hmm.
mean, the canopy was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, it felt like it was 8 o'clock at night in some places.
Oh wow.
And so it was good and bad. I mean, I could get some pretty good pictures without harsh light because the canopy was so thick. And then at times you're like, man, I wish I had a little bit more light to work with, type of deal. The hiking wasn't really that bad. A lot of the places that I was at turned out to be ancient Mayan ruins. And so, of course, there's a ton of jungle growth, but there was a little bit more terrain, a little bit more hilly and stuff like that because they were overgrown ruins. And so there was some topography there that you could work with. And, it was hard to see birds. I would totally recommend having a guide when you're down there, at least your first time, because I mean, he was able to point stuff out that I could never imagine seeing. I mean, I found I think it was a kite, so I mean, it's a fairly big bird. And he's like, hey, it's right there. And it took me like 5 minutes to find it. I mean, it's just because there was so much thick jungle, but totally fun to shoot in. Way different than, shooting in the mountains up here or,
Hmm.
in the plains and the sagebrush out here in Montana. But a fun challenge that was totally worth it. And I'll do it again for sure.
Awesome. Yeah. Where in Alaska are you looking at going to? I'm going to Nome next summer, so I'm curious if it's
Yeah,
around
that's
there.
the area that I was looking
Oh,
at was
cool.
Nome
Awesome.
for birds, especially.
Yeah, I'm doing a birding tour. I'll have to give you some of my notes there.
Heck yeah, that'd be appreciated. So
Of course. Yeah.
totally. And then I'd love to go to Katmai for bears.
Oh yeah.
That's so high on my list. I mean, it's going to happen within the next 3 years for sure. Katmai is going to happen. So
Cool. Yeah,
Awesome.
that's the brown bears, right?
yeah, the
Cool.
Alaskan brown bear. So,
It's cool how much like diversity you have in all your like your wildlife photos and everything. Like you really choose to like shoot a little bit of everything, which is really cool.
yeah, and that's something that some of my mentors have been like, for portfolio purposes, it's always good to like hone in on something and try to perfect it. And I just can't wrap my head around that yet. I just I'm such an opportunist when it comes to wildlife and bird photography and in landscape photography. I mean, I'll be shooting an elk and then I'll look up and I'm like, oh, dude, I need to get the picture of that light on that mountain, and I'll totally switch. And it's probably my ADD or something like that, of course. But I just I can't wrap my hand around focusing on just one thing. I'm totally an opportunist when it comes to wildlife photography. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't even really think it's something to really grow out of. Like honestly, it's like just use that to your advantage, really. Because yeah, it is easy to get bored sometimes with doing the same thing if you specialize, some kind of genre or like some kind of discipline of like a subject or something. So
Yeah, and I don't think I will. I will probably say I'll always gravitate more towards bird photography, especially when you have guys like Theodore and Ray and Scott that come away with phenomenal
Oh
bird
yeah.
photos, and just to have a chance to be like, I want to get something similar to that one day. I mean, just the challenge in that alone is something that I'll never perfect. So definitely cool guys to, aspire to shoot similarly to.
Mhm. Yeah.
But
yeah,
definitely birds would probably be what I gravitate towards the most, just because there's so many different species. And one day you can shoot a chickadee doing this, and then the next day it's completely different behavior. And so that's kind of the draw for me for that, is it's always changing.
That's awesome.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. And it's like there's never a dull moment all year too. Like there's always something going on or some kind of sighting or observation to have too.
Mm.
Yeah, totally. Like I was even in LA for work a few years ago on something I had to do for work, and I'm out in the parking lot chasing around hummingbirds with
Wow.
my camera. So I mean, there's you can, no matter where you're at, you can take pictures of birds. So that's kind of another draw for me.
Do you get a lot of like migration species through Montana?
We do. We get quite a bit of the, like I said, we get the big snow goose migration that comes through here.
Yeah.
It's like one of their main stops is in northeast or northwest Montana. Like I said, we can get flocks of 12 to 15,000 for 2 or 3 or 4 days on end. We get quite a few warbler species that come through here. So we do have a pretty good migration.
Awesome.
Obviously not as good as like, the Midwest, obviously, but enough for me for sure.
Enough to keep you busy. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like I said, there's 436 recorded species in the state of Montana, and I've got about 200 and some left to go. So I'll be busy for a while.
That's awesome. Do you use like eBird at all or any like apps like that? You do?
Nope. For research purposes, I'm on eBird all the time. If I'm going to a location, I'll spend months on eBird. And then that's a great way for me to document my lists and stuff like that. So I think I'm pretty active on eBird. That's addicting in itself too, completely outside of photography. Holy cow.
Yeah. Definitely.
It gets you excited too.
Yeah. Do you guys use eBird?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Definitely.
Yep.
Yeah. I feel like I'd be so much farther behind, like years behind even with like sightings, my life list and all that. Like if I didn't have eBird.
Oh yeah. Yeah, totally. Like I said, then that's another thing about bird photography that's so fun. At least for me, is the research. When you have a dozen target species and you're spending the time researching them and looking at, counts and where they're seen and all this stuff, and then what they like, what trees they like, like in the Midwest. I mean, I'm probably where you guys are at, but like so many warblers like are drawn towards hemlock.
Yes.
And like I would have never imagined learning about trees so I can take pictures of birds, but it's totally happening. And just I don't know, maybe it's the educator in me because I wanted to be a teacher at one point. I just love that research and that preparation for bird photography and wildlife, the elk, the deer, the bighorn sheep, antelope, all of it. But man, just the bird stuff is so much fun. Like elf owls, the smallest owls. I was able to get elf owls in 2 states in the U.S. so far.
Awesome.
Just researching to find those was fun. Green jays in south part of Texas, varied buntings down in Texas, painted buntings. Wow. I mean, just the research for all of them has been so much fun.
Yeah, see these birds, all the ones you just mentioned, are completely new for Ryan and I. Like just with the part of the country we live in. So that's awesome with that big diversity.
Yeah. And what are your guys? I'm just curious. What are your guys' life lists? Do you know off the top of your head?
Oh, I think mine's like 176. I think last I checked.
Mine's 118. I started like serious birding like a year and a half ago, so still growing.
That's not bad. Like I said, I probably started. I think I started recording an eBird in like 2016. And I think I'm at 436 maybe.
Wow, that's an amazing life list right there. Yeah.
I think like when I went to Texas, I was able to get like 130 new birds.
Wow. Yeah, when I go to Nome, I like calculated it. There's like a potential to get like 230 species like almost easily, like just in a week. So
yeah, and I think Belize, I was there, like I said, for 3.5 days, and I think I came away with 110 maybe.
Wow.
But if there were places I could have gone that were closed because of the pandemic, I probably could have got close to 200.
Awesome. So, yeah.
That sounds reasonable. Yeah. It's like the more you travel, especially out of state, I mean, like your numbers can double, triple even for your life list.
Yeah, and if you can hit a migration route and, I'm assuming like Dauphin Island, when we go there, if we hit it right, we can probably come back with 60, 70.
Awesome.
Between shorebirds and different warbler species that we don't get out here in Montana. So,
yeah. Ryan and I in May, we're going to Biggest Week up in by Lake Erie in Ohio. And apparently there's like blackbirdy and warblers just like right off the boardwalk, and you have to use a wide angle just to get a picture. So we're both
that's excited. Actually in my folder on my computer for places to go.
Oh, awesome.
Up there. So
yeah,
I probably won't make it there this year, but
yeah, no worries. Yeah, a lot of people go up there, so it's probably very crowded. But is that your first time, Henry, going up there? It is for me.
At this time of year, yeah, I've visited, just done some landscape stuff, but never birding. So,
okay, off season, so to speak.
Yeah. But if you guys can make another one in the spring, South Padre Island, and the golf there, South Texas, is a phenomenal place. That's a great place for migration. So,
I'm going to an island in Florida in April North Captiva. It's kind of remote, so that's got like, I know it's really famous for its frigate birds, so I'm excited about that. Never seen that before, so.
We got those when I was in Belize. I didn't get any really good photos of them, but we got to see quite a few.
Cool. Yeah.
Awesome. With spring coming up, is there anything like particular, like target birds, warblers, anything that you're really, chasing after?
When we go down to the island, I really want to try to get some really good shots of cerulean warbler, black-throated gray, if I can, Blackburnian. I don't have any really good shots of that yet. And then, of course, I'm always looking for really good grizzly bear pictures when they come out of hibernation. And then I'd like to get some more first of the year young as far as wildlife goes, calf elk, on deer, that kind of thing. I've got a few, but not a whole lot yet. And that's kind of something I wanted to focus on in the spring.
Cool.
Right. Yeah, that's the awesome part. There's always something to see in spring. So
yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing your work on that. That'll be awesome.
I appreciate that. So
yeah, of course.
I enjoy your guys' work too, that's for sure. So
thank you.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we appreciate that.
And this has been a great episode. I mean, this has been one of my favorites, if I'm being honest. You're a great guy and you take some great photos. So
thanks, I appreciate it. So actually only my second podcast I've ever done. So.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Cool.
What's the other one you've been on?
It's called the Big Fat Podcast. It's a local guy here where I live that started doing one. I think he's only up to 17 or 18 episodes, but we'd known each other a long time. And it turned out to be like a 2-hour podcast. It was pretty fun.
Wow. Cool.
That's awesome.
So what about you guys? Do you have any targets this spring?
Yeah, for me, this is just like my first like serious birding year. So I'm just going to hit warblers hard. Yeah, I've already doing research on like wildlife refuges and habitats. So, prothonotary, black and white, just pine warbler, just your basic ones, get all those. And when I'm in Ohio too, I can get some of the more rare ones checked off my list. So
yeah, I did see one of you guys got a snowy the other day.
Oh yeah, so that's interesting.
Story.
Yeah, Ryan and I were actually together for that. So my grandparents live kind of near Ryan up in Ohio. So I was visiting them. So I finally got to meet Ryan in person for the first time. And we shot all day, and we went to this lake around noon. And we were shooting a mockingbird, right? It was, yeah.
Yeah. Because I know my neck of the woods a little bit better, so I was just like, "Hey Henry, let's go to this like local state near like Southwest Ohio." And a few minutes later, we get there, and like in the parking lot's a northern mockingbird, like just off in the tree line. So we're just like scoping it, looking at it, taking some photos of it for like probably 5-10 minutes maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then these local people, this couple comes by, and I've heard their names before, but I never met them in person. And they're like, "Oh, we got some reports today of a snowy owl like that morning." And so we just basically followed, tagged along, and we ended up looking around, scanning the lake. We saw people on the other side of the lake because they had a report over there that it was like flown over there. And so we all but given up, all four of us. So we're all walking back to our cars, and it was just like perched on the sign next to the beach in like the marina.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, it was like, we were pretty close up on it, but like within reason, of course. But it was just a wild moment to see that after we'd given up.
Yeah, and I was like, "Hey Ryan, is that a snowy owl?" I was like, "No, it's probably another plastic bag," because we had just been looking for like an hour. And it was just plastic bag after plastic bag, but it ended up being a snowy. And yeah, we shot it for about an hour. And it was funny because everybody was on the other side of the lake, like Ryan mentioned. You could see them, get the alerts or whatever, and they were all driving over these big lines of cars. So, but we were the first ones. Yeah.
I'm a little jealous. Snowy owls are one of my target birds, and we get them here in the winter in Montana. And this year there happens to be a ton of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to go about 3.5-4 hours north before I can start getting into where they're at. And I actually went up there last weekend, and we had like 60-mile-an-hour winds for the entire time I was there. And I mean, I didn't see any snowy owls. I was kind of bummed, and I looked on one of the Facebook pages that Montana Owls or something like that. And one of the roads I was on, the same day I was there, somebody posted like, "I got my first snowy owl pictures." And I'm like, really?
Oh, geez.
I mean, so I'm jealous of anybody that gets photos of a snowy owl because I really want some. And I haven't been able to close the deal yet, but I'm not giving up. I've got about another month and a half before they'll start migrating back north, and hopefully I can seal the deal.
Awesome.
You
Yeah,
know,
good
the
luck
nice
with
thing
that.
about bird photography is if it doesn't happen this year, it can happen next year. So
Oh yeah.
Right. Especially the snowy owls, because it's like a toss up with the eruption years and all that stuff too. Which I feel like
yeah, like
this winter has been like the case for that, at least here in the Midwest.
yeah, this year's definitely an eruption year. I mean, the numbers are phenomenal. Like
Mhm.
northeastern and northwestern Montana has a huge number. Like people are seeing 5 and 6 and 7 a day.
Wow.
So, you know, it's just a matter of, you know, me connecting with one and
Mhm.
wanting the photo. I mean, I'd love to get one with the alpenglow on them, you know, right after
Oh
sunset
yeah.
or right before sunrise. You know, I want everything in my one shot. You know,
Mhm.
so
Right,
Yeah.
right. I don't know about you, Henry, but it's like that day for the two of us. Like I feel like the experience and the story is more special than like the photos we took.
Oh yeah,
I don't
for
know.
sure. Yeah, I love the
Yeah.
photos, but like, yeah, I definitely agree.
It was
Um,
like overcast light, so
uh-huh.
it wasn't the most flattering,
Yeah.
but yeah,
But
which made it more
one of the
interesting.
signs, it was pretty funny. It had like all these like expletives on them, and I cloned him out and stuff. But it was kind of funny. But he did end up landing on the ground, so we got some better photos there. Or I think it was a
and you got
she
to yeah,
actually. But yeah.
and you got to experience it together. You know, I think
Oh yeah.
that's something else with photography that I haven't been able to experience anywhere else. I mean, hunting, yes, but the closest thing to it would be photography. And when my best friend and I get to go, when Zane and I are out on a trip together and we get to experience that same thing, and then we talk about it all year, you know. I mean, he lives in Alabama, so we only see each other a few times a year, you know. And so it's like, dude, remember when we were taking pictures of this? And remember when I went this way and you went that way? You got the cerulean warbler and I got nothing, you know. I was like, you know, so
Yeah.
it's so great. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like we've been best friends since we were 3 years old, I think. Our parents have been best friends forever, but just this experience, like we meet each other to go hunting, and then once we both started taking pictures, it's like, you know, we're doing all these trips to all over the U.S. a couple times a year, and it's made our friendship even stronger. So definitely something cool that you guys got to experience that
Oh
together
yeah.
for sure.
And for our first time meeting too, it's like sets the expectations high. So
Yeah, and
yeah.
I didn't know you guys didn't meet each other. I didn't know you guys were not like. I figured you guys have known each other a long time by the way you guys are
Yeah,
on the
so I mean,
podcast.
we just met through this other photographer who made a group chat, and I guess we kind of just commented on each other's posts, and then I came to Ryan and another guy about the podcast, and the other guy dropped off pretty early, but Ryan and I just kept going and built our friendship from there. So
Dude, that's awesome. That's freaking cool, man.
yeah.
You know, it's just something that, you know, something like a hobby or a lifestyle like this can do. It's pretty
Hmm.
cool.
Yep, and I think people talk about the negatives of social media, but one of the positives is really all the connections you can make with other photographers. So
Yeah,
Yeah. Like the three of us.
totally. Totally. Yeah,
mhm.
totally. I mean, I would have never imagined, you know, 5, 6 years ago being on a podcast talking to other photographers that have the same passion that I have for it, and like meeting some of the people that I've aspired to, like Ron Hayes and
Mhm.
some of those other guys. So that's pretty cool. And then I'd love to go shoot with Ray Hennessy just to
Oh yeah,
watch him one day,
same.
you know, or Theodore. I think you guys had Theodore on not too long
Hmm.
ago, didn't you?
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
a
I've
great
never met
episode.
him, but just
Hmm.
his photographs, you know, and Scott Keys. I mean, watching his bird photography,
Yep.
holy cow.
Hmm. And what's
So
crazy about like Scott Keys and Theodore too, they have day jobs, like just
yeah,
like
yeah.
us.
So I mean, it's yeah,
It's
just like
crazy.
us. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, we're big
And
fans of them
Jason,
too.
yeah, Jason Loftus. I don't know if you guys are familiar with his work
Yep.
out of
Yep.
Utah. He has a
Hmm.
full-time day job still too,
Hmm.
you know. And
Man,
I was
that.
actually almost got to go shoot with him out this coming
Oh
weekend,
wow.
but I
Yeah,
just couldn't get it to work out. So
I'd love to shoot with those wild and exposed guys someday. They're such an
yeah,
inspiration.
yeah, they're great. They're great guys. Like I said, I got to visit with Ron a little bit today,
Cool.
even over the phone. So we're making some plans for some spring trips.
Awesome.
We only live like 4 hours apart from each other, so
Wow. Cool.
but heck yeah.
Henry got me turned on to that podcast. Yeah, it's great. They have a great show.
They do. So like between that one, you guys, and then honestly Joe Rogan. I don't know who doesn't listen to Joe Rogan anymore these days,
I
but
know, right? Yeah.
you know, my
He's
podcast,
everywhere.
my cache is pretty full, you know,
Uh-huh.
between the three of those. So
Well, I appreciate you putting us on the same level as Wild and Exposed and Joe Rogan. That's
Yeah, that's
it
a
means
high
a lot.
honor.
Yeah.
there you go. You've made it now,
Maybe you'll be popular someday, right?
right? Yeah. Now
Yeah.
we all wish for the was it 1.2 billion
Oh yeah.
listens a day or something like that
A day.
Rogan gets.
Hmm. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, Henry and I do this for the love of it, I think, first and foremost, which,
Mhm.
hopefully we'll never lose that attitude.
No, and I don't think we will. I mean, obviously, you guys are as passionate as I am about it, and I mean, what are you guys, half my age? So you got a long way to go.
Yeah, I'm
You'll
only
be
17, so I got a long way.
what?
Yep.
17.
Yep.
Yeah.
Jeez.
26.
So are you actually still in high school then?
Yeah, I'm graduating in May, so.
Right on.
Yep.
Dude, you got it figured out.
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations.
I don't know about
on
that,
man.
but.
No.
Too soon.
Oh, I know
yeah.
I know what I was doing when I was 17, and it sure as hell wasn't taking pictures.
Yeah.
So,
You still have to get
No.
in some high school adventures occasionally, but
totally.
pictures as well.
Yeah.
Totally.
Enjoy your teens while you have them.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I can say. Yeah.
Yeah, because the next thing you know, you turn 40 and you're freaking out about it. So,
Yeah.
Right.
actually, I'm not. I thought it was going to be a big deal, but I still go to the gym 6 days a week, and I can still outlift most of the teenagers and 20-year-olds that are there, and I can hold my own in the mountains for a week on end, and so I'm doing pretty good. I feel pretty good about it.
Awesome. Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's
thanks for coming on tonight. It was a great episode.
Hey, I appreciate you guys having me. Like I said, it was fun.
Yeah.
Cool.
And all of Cole's work is down below. You have an Instagram, a website. Is that?
Yeah, so I've got an Instagram. It's just Chasing the Wild Outdoors. I've got a website that's pretty much just for, documentation purposes. I mean, there's photos on there that I would never sell, but they're on there because I would like to see how I progress. And that's just Chasing the Wild Outdoors at .zenfolio.com. Facebook, Chasing the Wild Outdoors. And then I have a blog too that's I'm a year behind on it just because I don't know. It's time consuming, but I do update that blog. It's Chasing the Wild Outdoors as well. I think it's a WordPress blog. So I'm out there a little bit on the socials. Not crazy though.
Awesome.
So yeah. Thanks so much, Cole.
Hey, you bet. Thanks for having me, guys.
If you ever want to come back on again, just let us know.
Anytime.
Awesome. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching the All Outdoors Photography Podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and the video version on YouTube as well. You can subscribe down below, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you.